Well, there we go. That is not only am I on time, I'm actually 10 seconds early. So there we go. We're live for Rail Natter. It's episode 149. Light rail does not exist. Another Not a Metro fun. In fact, it's not. It is episode 149. But as the real nerds on here know, it is actually the 150th episode. We've done 150 of these. Golly gosh. Stevie and Selby is looking forward to another hour of me getting inexplicably angry about definitions that I've made up. Yes, but the point is, I've made these up because they're better than any other categorization of urban transit systems. And there's a reason why I've made up these categorizations. There's a reason I've created them. I'm going to explore that. As we always do in these episodes, we shall explore that through the medium of testing it to destruction. Or hopefully, as has been the case so far, not to destruction. This is not a South Wales. We've already slandered the South Wales Metro. The South Wales Metro isn't a metro. Just like the one that I saw. That my favourite is when I was in Leeds the other day, and it was and there were lots of metro signs on bus stations. It's like no. Let's crack on, shall we? First of all, episode 149. There is no class 149. It'll be our British Railways class 149. Except there is. Because when they built what became known as the Class 121 bubble cars, this is a motor one here, but they also built a load of trailer vehicles with only one cab on them. And then the original version of TOPS, those were classified as Class 149. So there you go. Also Britain's longest running DMU. It's not the Pacer. It is the Class 121. So there you go. All the friends are here. Anyway. Launch all of your suggestions when we bring up the Not a Rail sorter momentarily. We'll definitely have a run through the sorter at the end for all of your good fun. So, before I get ahead of myself, because I forget, I get distracted and then I forget what the order of slides are in. I need to shout at you all happily by saying, "Welcome to tonight's Rail Natter." And as the Intercity 225 fades away, Taipizza Lord is choosing Rail Natter over Taisky Sour, which is epic, frankly. How cool is that? And this episode was triggered by a couple of tweets. Firstly, there's someone sent a fun viral tweet out at the end of 2022 just pointing out how stupid light rail as a definition is by saying I love light rail and then posting a couple of interurbans. What is that, a Metroliner? And then just some stupidly named things that the US does categorize as light rail. Mostly interurbans there, but they're very much not light rail. But it's running on street, so just making a mockery of the definition. And I enjoyed that, and it gave me an excuse to tweet out that light rail just doesn't exist. It's a meaningless category. It does not exist. There is no such thing as light rail. I strongly assert this point. We're not in any meaningful definition. It's a useless definition that we should all, as transport aficionados, nerds, keen, interested parties, we should avoid its use. And then it also kind of launched by the fact that there's kind of increasingly low pixel evidence of the new DLR rolling stock, Docklands Light Railway rolling stock. Again, Docklands Light Railway, very stupidly named. And these are appearing. They're built by CAF. So they're going to be getting introduced fairly soon. I think next year, perhaps. Is it in 2024 that they should actually be entering service? There you go. So these two tweets are what triggered it, and then that kind of obviously then brought back got me a chance to get out the Not a Metro sorter, which got lots of people. Yes, absolutely. Heavy rail is also a stupid definition. Like light rail is a stupid definition. Also is heavy rail. Heavy rail is meaningless too. Fully agree. Type is a lord. I'm not very good at pronouncing the all caps name. Apologies for not doing a very good job. Anywho, so we've had a few. So we will Yeah, Xander Veach is pointing out. Actually, sorry, Xander. Is it Veitch? Your last name. I say Veach because I know someone with that name in the UK who says Veach, but actually, given where you're in Austria, your name might be Veitch. Please correct me, Xander, given that we've been chatting away as online chums for quite a while now. There's no such thing as medium rail, Tom, you cheeky monkey. Oh, dear. Anyway, right, let's get on with this. So this is the Not a Metro Sorter, which all of you should be familiar with, happily familiar with. And we are going to kick off with some categorizations. I'll actually just very quickly, as you all know, I like to rearrange my slides. We're going to drop in here. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to drop in, before we do that, I'm going to drop in a sorter for the end there. We'll do some last minute sorterizations. So let me get my small face up in the corner for starters. Hello, everyone. And then go over here. So it's time to do some categorizations. We're going to do all these discussions. Will Deacon is pointing out heavy rail as a legal definition of the third railway package. Yes, legal definitions are irrelevant to me, Will. Legal definitions are often very, very stupid and make no sense whatsoever. Again, it's the same with light rail. Light rail is defined legally. Heavy rail, defined legally. Both stupid categorizations that mean absolutely nothing valuable or useful whatsoever. Including probably for their legal application as well, as is the case if you look at the way that trams are regulated in the UK. They're not regulated well, hence why we had the derailment at the Sandylands curve. So these definitions can be dangerous as well as problematic from a political and a policy perspective. Anyway, it's Kategorisierungszeit. We're going to do some categorizations. And we're going to start with light rail. We're going to start... yes, Will, that is your job, Buggard, absolutely. We're going to start with the theme of the episode, light rail. It's got scare quotes around it, light rail. Light rail in the UK, as with lots of parts of the world, is legally defined. And it's legally defined based on an act from 1896. We are 1896 there. The Light Railways Act. And... indeed, it was all part of essentially enabling cheaper railways to be built for kind of various applications. It was expected that it might result in a great surge. It was partly lobbied for by the railway companies to allow them to attempt to tackle the rise of the urban tram, the electric tram, and it didn't work particularly, to be honest. Lots of other reasons why this appeared, but it's essentially for political reasons. It was not through any particular change in what those railways would be able to achieve. If we did want to use my sorter as a legal definition, Sakura, then yes, that would be allowable. So that's the legal definition. But that legal definition. Let's just take the US and other parts of the world. That legal definition, or rather the name, the words light rail, light railway, light rail transit, is often horribly. People go, oh, LRT, that means light rail transit. No, LRT means light rapid transit. And I'm sorry, rapid transit is also a stupid, meaningless definition. What's rapid transit? It doesn't mean anything. It's just not helpful. Certainly, it's easily hijackable. Anyway, so, you've got different systems here. You know what I'm going to do, actually? I'm going to pointer options. I'm going to change my ink color to white because I think that's probably going to be most useful coming up. Yeah, so you see here is an obvious, it's a streetcar. But this is also, this is a sort of an interurban type thing. It's actually part of the inverted commas metro system of Los Angeles, I believe. And then this thing is in... oh, golly, where is this? I think this might be... is it in Marrakesh? I might have dreamt that. In any case, it's not in the US, not in Europe. But it's a pretty standard. All of these... what are all of these? Well, all of these are... they're all trams, aren't they? As we know, because if it involves street running, then that street running, as is important, that street running is a limitation on the safety, the capacity, and the functionality of the system. But it doesn't need to be technologically defined. If you have street running, that means that you're mixing it with other traffic, which means that you're limiting the potential of that system. Hence why the Not a Metro Sorter specifically categorizes it as, well, then it's a tram. It is a tram, and should be considered as such. But light rail also might refer to things like the old Parry People Mover, which is it's a tram, or is it? Because it doesn't have any street running. No, it's not a tram. It's a light metro because it doesn't have any street running. It doesn't have any other traffic running on this track. It's entirely segregated. There we go. So there we go. Richard Smith is suggesting they should use classifications from fighting sports like feather rail, bantam rail, light rail, welterweight rail. Yeah, agreed. I like it. Welter rail, very nice. Good stuff. So, but also light rail might include the railway that used to be over there within eyesight of me, the DVLR. So there is the DVLR with an early rail bus there, which is hilarious. They thought that would turn it around, it didn't. There's a DVLR, but the DVLR was laid with mostly conventional tracks. It wasn't hugely well maintained. They didn't have a deep ballast on it. The stations were pretty hilarious, but it was just a rail. It was just pretty much a regular railway and used as much for quite a long time. So yeah, light rail, stupid. And if you think about light rail, you think, as we were talking about a minute ago, the reason why light rail is stupid because it includes so many different variables. Like the lightness of the track system is likely to be represented if in the ability of the system to move people or things. But in this case, we're talking about mass transit, kind of urban mass transit, so it's people. So if you've got the situation where you have any of those systems we've looked at, you can go through. Well, if they're carrying, so take the Los Angeles Metro, that system is likely to be limited in its capacity by the fact that it has street running sections. It doesn't have segregated running, even though other parts of it are underground. Right. This will become relevant as we get into the Germanosphere definitions. Right. So. Martha's about to do battle with me about Stadtbahn because we'll lock horns over this one in a minute when we get to Stadtbahn. Anywho, so so light rail, meaningless, absolute meaningless. There is, however, a better use for light and heavy. So when I talk about so on this, I do use the words light and heavy. I don't use them to refer to the technology. I don't use them to refer to the infrastructure. I don't use them to refer to the trains. What I'm doing is using them to refer to their capability to move people around. So a light system is one that carries fewer people. A heavy system is one that carries more people. And so hence kind of why I've used this. Actually, I do need to change my pen color back. I thought I was going to be cleverer than this, but you know me better. Let's get the old red pen back. So. The reason I have heavy tram and also, light metro, light suburban rail, heavy suburban rail, the reason I've chosen to include these different systems is because it helps us to understand there's quite a substantial difference in terms of what the kit has to look like to get past these sort of thresholds of less than 10k, more than 10k, more than 20k. Right? There's quite a substantial difference in the sorts of kit that you need to achieve that, whether it comes to the signalling, the trains themselves, the crashworthiness associated with the system, all that stuff. But all of that stuff gets wrapped up into safely achieving these capacities. Remember that PPHPD is passengers per hour per direction. So a heavy tram, this is... Okay, they do exist in some places. I would not recommend running a tram at this level of capacity. Anything above 20,000 passengers per hour per direction, a tram is not a well-suited technology to achieving this because you don't want to have street running sections with that level of capacity. So whilst they exist, I would not recommend them. It's almost like I keep being tempted every now and then to change it to having a red thing of change that to a metro because it shouldn't be a tram. But no, I'm willing to kind of secede to the fact that those systems seem to run in a few places. Budapest has one, for example. Also heavy suburban rail. Again, suburban rail that's running at capacities of over 20,000 passengers per hour per direction is that's quite an impressive bit of unsegregated rail infrastructure, and it's likely to be causing headaches or resulting in sacrifices to the regional railway network. Ideally, you would segregate that. So again, heavy suburban rail, really, you ought to be looking at converting that into a metro by segregating the totality of the route. And it might be that there's 4 tracks, 2 of which are your metro system, 2 of which are for everything else. But the segregation is operational, signalling wise. No trains are scheduled to use those tracks other than your potential metro system. So, and light suburban rail here is really referring to a situation where you've got a quite a low capacity system, but it does have, but it is a railway system. It's kind of perhaps has some of our 6 features we talked about in previous episodes of things like integration, simplicity of system, and it's integrated into the urban transport system, but isn't segregated. It does not have dedicated tracks, therefore is not a light metro or a metro system. So all that chatter, let us continue on our adventure. So that's what I think we should be using light and heavy for, because otherwise we end up in a discussion about technologies. And that's a conversation which, frankly, is irrelevant. Technologies are an enabler. This is part of me wanting to pull us out of a psychology of starting with thinking about technology and not thinking about what the system is supposed to achieve. Because we as nerds need to be better at thinking and better at pushing for policymakers to think about what is your system supposed to be achieving, policymaker. Technology then facilitates that, not I want this technology irrelevant of what it achieves. Because that's the way we approach the system where that's the way we approach a policy-making process where we get the right system for the right level of demand. Let's use an example of looking at light by looking at the Liverpool Overhead Railway. This is a technology, if we're going to go from a technology perspective, from the late 1800s, but it was pretty the 1890s, I think it was when it was first built. In fact, it might be 1896, same time as the Light Railways Act. Anyway, an interesting system. You can see a very small part of it. It was destroyed. It should have been retained and used as an an elevated system, a bit like that in the US. Would have been nice, but it was got rid of because of short-sightedness. And a lack of interest in just paying to repair it a bit from the government at the time. So Liverpool Overhead Railway, you can go and see a bit of it in the Liverpool Museum, which is nice. It's fun. I'd recommend it. It's always well worth going and having a look at it. Yes, lots of good chat. Remember, if you've got Leah Schneider says, I use light designation for a system that only supports lightly armoured trains with an armament of 30mm autocannons or lower. A heavy system supports full armoured trains with 120mm plus armament. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can buy into that. That's good stuff. Martha Lauren's pointing out the fact that better rail transport is the fact the government won't fund the additional light metro infrastructure the region needs, but precisely. Let us consider what the Liverpool Overhead Railway is. Well, it does not have more than 10,000 passengers per hour per direction. At the time, it did not know. I'm assuming that based on an assumed seating and frequency pattern, but it didn't. But it did have steel wheels on steel wheels. I believe there was no street running. Someone can correct me on that, but I believe there was no street running. It did have dedicated tracks, which means it's a light metro. It was a light metro system. So lovely, 1896, nice light metro system. Marvellous. There's lots of discussions going on already proving my point in the chat about Schnellstadtbahns or Stadtschnellbahns or Schnellbahns or whatever. These definitions are all bobbins, as we're about to find out. And the fact that you're all arguing over which version of those definitions you're going for proves my point marvellously. Yes, there are some vertical posts of the Liverpool Overhead Railway buried in a wall down by Pierhead Station. Absolutely. Good nerdery in the chat there. So, what about the DLR? What about the Docklands Light Railway? Stupidly named. What about it? So, the DLR. What is it going to be? People are now discussing whether whether light rail can also be a technical, by the look of it. Robin Weston, twin cab Toyota technical with 120mm cannon, but with roll-on with road rail wheels, right? Yeah. Is that a technical? Question mark. So the DLR. Here's the DLR with some particularly amusing. Actually, I need get my ink color back to white again. I'm trying to be as eye friendly as possible at this point. So why is my phone going bonkers? Phone, what are you up to? Is there some magnets in my laptop wibbling you? Switching you on and off. Here's the DLR train, perhaps humorously with a pantograph above it, because this is for the Metrolink, the Manchester Metrolink. Again, stupidly named, the Manchester Metrolink trial, proving that it would be a good idea to do that, and so they were running it on the existing tracks to prove that it would work. So it's a bit weird, isn't it? Project Light Rail, as it is, but again, stupid light rail definitions confusing people. There, nice GEC logo at the front there. Lovely GEC, marvellous. Anyway, there's a DLR train doing its thing. It's looking more conventional. You can see it's got dedicated infrastructure here, looking pretty swish-looking dedicated infrastructure. A little 2-car old original DLR vehicle. Those still exist. I think they're in Germany, aren't they? Yeah. It was cursed to see a DLR train with a pantograph. Very weird. Right. No on-street running, but there was an underground section. Yes, there was an underground section. Don't want underground, overground. We'll get there. Also irrelevant to the overall system definition. Let's. So this is there's the old stock, which looked a bit more tram-like, but definitely still sort of, it was running on a segregated system. These are the new trains where they've stopped pretending it isn't what it is. These are metro trains. These are just outright metro trains. They sniff of metro, as in they look weird. They haven't got some of the aerodynamic features and some of the crashworthiness features that a non-segregated system might have. They're built. They're brilliant. They look good. I think they look quite good. I mean, they're built by CAF, so jury's out on whether they hold themselves together for very long. But fine. Let's see how they go and see if they disintegrate into cracked junk instantly. So they run on the Essen Stadtbahn. Yes, no, the Essen. They can call it the Essen Stadtbahn, but it isn't. There's no such thing as a Stadtbahn, of course. They run on. They've been converted from metro vehicles into tram vehicles by that decision. Anyway, so what about DLR? What is DLR? Well, DLR is a metro. It has a high enough capacity, over 20,000 passengers per direction, with the current fleet. I think that'll only increase, but it's currently a metro system, and it will be even more of a metro system when the new trains are introduced. So there you go. That is the Docklands Light Railway. It's not a light railway. It's a metro. So maybe we need to rename it into something different. Maybe we need to think of a different way to name London's mass transit systems. That's a previous episode, though, wasn't it? That was the Purple Rail Natter episode. Anyway, right, so Straßenbahn. We're getting into our German definitions. Oh, I forgot to. This is where if I was better organised, I'd have a drop and I'd have a German flag. In fact, you know what? Let's go big face briefly because verdammt, I will do this. Where is he? Where is European Trains with John? Where is he? Because I just want Europe lessons. That's the one. I just want to go in here. It's worth it. It's worth it. We're doing big face and it's worth it. There we go. Fine. Good. Editing on the fly is absolutely pro and professional, and everything's fine and healthy with me doing that. Let's go this way, and we want... yeah, okay, fine, good. Fine. There we go. Appleberry. Fine. Oh, damn it. That's not the right one, is it? Don't laugh at me, but I've just copied over Belgium's flag, not Germany's flag. Oh man, there we go. I've got the one I want. Fine. Oh, good grief. We're nearly there. Fine. Appleberry. Good. Right. Back to my miniaturized face, because it's time to go. Germany, here we are, Deutschland. We're talking about the Germanosphere, not just Germany actually, because we're talking about this includes Austria, includes Switzerland, actually includes quite a lot of other countries across Europe who are emulating some of these models, so it's worth thinking about them. DLR being a metro means London has 3 types of metro. Yes, the subsurface lines, although in some cases those subsurface lines actually cross boundaries, and there are some good edge cases on the underground, because there are, for example, some of the subsurface lines mix it with some of the mainline rail services, so some of those light suburban services. So that almost would categorise them as suburban or heavy suburban rail rather than, yes. So anyway, John Mannion pointing out that if you transplanted DLR infrastructure anywhere else in the world, you'd call it a metro. Absolutely, John, yeah. So, right. And we did define quite a few of the other systems, I think, in the last episode, but the time where metro is a light metro. No, it's not. It's light suburban rail / suburban rail, because it has non-segregated sections, including the new bit that just opened, because there's freight that runs on that as well. Anyway, Deutschland. Straßenbahn. Straßenbahn is easy. Straßenbahn is just the German word for trams. So that's fine. It's just trams. So there's no controversy here. Straßenbahn is just the translation for trams. Street railway is the direct translation. So fine. Yeah, that's easy enough. It's a tram. If you've got a Straßenbahn that has a huge capacity, then it might end up being a heavy tram. But I don't think any of them run in Germany. Oh, I've managed to do that. Why have I my format? You know how much I care about formatting, folks. This is not enough to enough rather to interrupt the episode about it. There we are. Fine, good. So Straßenbahn. We're happy to agree on that one, right? Everyone's happy. Marvelous. Now, here's where the controversy is. Martha's just currently loading a rifle and aiming it towards York. And where are we going? Yeah, here we go. Xander saying Dach, Deutschland, Austrian, and Swiss, as in the Swiss thing. No, there are some other questions coming through. Chuck me the other questions at the end because I'll lose them. There's a couple. Gustav Svard is saying DLR being a metro means London has 3 types of metro. Yes, I did say that, didn't I? Richard Smith is saying fundamentally DLR is a demonstration of how a system can change over time but still inherits its fundamental history and limitations. Bearing in mind it only became 3-car in the early 10s. Yeah, absolutely. Before that, it was a light metro. DLR, Metrolink, and Tyne and Weir Metro were all heavily based on German Stadtbahns, but ended up with dramatically different operational characteristics. Points out Martha Lauren. Thanks, Martha. So here we go. There's Michael C. Save your question about level boarding for later on. Yes. Sakura is pointing out that CH stands for Confederatio Helvetica. Yeah, it does. Absolutely it does, yeah. So, Stadtbahn. Here's the Rhine Nordwestphalia Stadtbahn icon, and it is, as you can see, confusing. Why does it have a U? Why does it have... It's very confusing. So we're going to talk about this. So here are some pictures of Stadtbahn, and I suppose this is probably the best image here because it shows... Well, I picked both these images for a reason, not just because they were on the German Wikipedia page for it. This one shows that there is a system here that is within an underground station, by the look of it, partially underground at least, but that vehicle looks like a tram, because it is a tram vehicle, right? And then you look on the other side, they aren't tram-looking vehicles, to be fair, or they're kind of, I suppose they are, but again, this makes the point, what is a tram-looking vehicle? But it is on street, and then you can see it's diving down underneath. Now, the fact that Stadtbahn doesn't exist as a proper category does not undermine the fact that these are very clever systems. They're very good, very clever systems, right? It's a very clever idea. What is it? Well, okay, here's where I'm trusting my own sketching capabilities. We have a nice set of tracks here, lovely, and then so this is kind of where you've got all your nice houses. Here we are, some houses, and they're very small, kind of low density sort of place. Lovely, low density, and you can sort of have your little system along here. Where this sort of you get the high density stuff, so kind of high density buildings, lovely, lots of high density buildings. It's a big city. There we are. I don't know why there's a power station in the middle of the city. You can have your system go down into a little tunnel. By the way, this is street running, so you might have your street kind of coming in like this or whatever, and you might have a bit where it goes on like this, and it's like it's proper street running, and you've got the system there. Fine, lovely. Street running goes into the tunnel and then kind of runs underneath essentially as an underground system. Fine, so you've got system kind of you've got some way of getting passengers above and down onto your sort of underground system, and then at the other end it climbs back up, and at the other suburbs again you've got small houses over here, lovely small houses. There's my dreadful sketch of and this is what the Germans call Stadtbahn. Oh, by the way, Germany, I know you like to capitalise your nouns, but it's a stupid rule, and the sooner you change your mind, the better, because it's very confusing to capitalise both normal nouns and proper nouns. It's confusing. Don't do it. So I'm trampling on your otherwise fun language. I can do so because I'm a Germanophile, so I get away with it, right? Anyway, so Stadtbahn. Now, what's the problem with this? Well, there are lots of non-problems with this. Firstly, it's a very clever use of... So you can start with a tram system, and then you can bury the tram system underground and put the road on top, and then create this, which is one quick and clever way to kind of create this system. It's It means you don't have to pay for the total segregation of a system. It also might mean that you could have, and often do have, other systems kind of coming in, and it's sort of, you might have another system kind of going off like this, off in this direction, to kind of another town over here, and you might have another town over here with, like, houses, more houses. Fine. And then they can all run in, and then likewise, kind of in the other direction, you can have the same sort of thing happening over here, and, houses. Fine. That's all fine and good. However, Xander's going to fight me on the capitalization rule. Why? Yeah, I'm John Maddening the hell out of this, Martha. Yeah, you better believe it. So, this is a good system, and I'm not disputing this is a great system. The problem is, it is still limited, both in terms of the type of vehicle, so things that you get out of a segregated system, like having high floor vehicles, so you can have easier level boarding and platforms that kind of work. The vehicles are optimized better if you've got them as entirely segregated, because you don't have to have, for example, independent axles like you have on a tram vehicle, which means that they ride better, things like canonicity. Lots of technological things that we don't need to talk about in terms of that are hidden in the back end of the Not a Metro sorter, but that come to the fore in edge case systems like this, where you're kind of running the mixture. Also, if you've got on street running wherever it happens to be, that means that the design of the vehicles is different. You've also got the risk that you're kind of imparting kind of delays in and out of your sort of high density system. Particularly, it might be that within this bit here, so this section here that I'm going to draw a big circle around, this section here might well end up being categorizable as a metro, a bit like in Philadelphia. They've got the sort of the, what do they call it? The trolleys. The actual trolleys they have, because they're trolleys above rather than pantos above. They essentially behave like a light metro within the urban core, and they're coming very frequently, to the point where they might tip between light metro and metro capacity. The trouble is, when they go out to the system, if you have a delay up here, some delay, that can mean that they're all the vehicles are sort of queued up here, not reaching into the system, which means that the resilience of the system and the ability for people to trust and rely on it is impacted heavily. So, for me, a Stadtbahn is still a tram. It's a very clever extra bolt, like with lots of extra benefits over just an entirely street-running surface tram, but it's still a tram. So that's why I come out with Stadtbahn as still being a tram. So, there's lots of people pointing out, Konstantin Haas, for example, saying if you separate the whole system, the branching stops. The branching stops being reasonable. Not necessarily. There are lots of branches on metro systems. All it means is that and this comes into on another reason why I think why I push the tram versus other systems is that, trams can be very good for the urban realm in terms of pushing private cars out of the urban realm. But again, in terms of mixing safe systems, having an urban realm where you have again, going from where you've got trams on street versus having a system where perhaps you elevate or bury, or perhaps just win some space and just kind of cut all the road crossings and put footbridges over it to have a segregated system. It doesn't take a huge amount to create a segregated system. In order to then bump that into being a light metro, brings lots of benefits. It brings lots of benefits. So Martha's pointing out, remember, Stadtbahn is good. It is good. I'm not saying that it being categorized as a tram undermines it. It just, I think, and it is an edge case. It's absolutely an edge case. And you might be able to say, well, within this, in the buried section, actually it is achieving, this is a metro level of provision, but it is a tram. So for me, I like to think of the weakest link in a transport system is where the problems are like to arise. So for me, I'm considering a line as the way I categorize it. So I would call a Stadtbahn a tram. Let's see. So Cora's asking for other. Absolutely. And good grief, the UK would benefit. Manchester. This would be one way for Manchester to deliver itself the path to a better mass transit system, right? Is for Metrolink to start having buried sections within the centre of the city and start increased capacity that way. But there are lots of benefits to having a system that is that does merit and is satisfy the categorization of becoming a light metro system. So I think that's where it's useful. Karlsruhe is just a tram. Karlsruhe system is just a tram. Yeah, no, Martha, I absolutely agree. Like the Stadtbahn, that approach. I'm not saying that we stop referring to those sort of specific approaches. I think it's just about. I think there's value to the categorization, sort of splitting between. Well, it's still a type of tram. It might be a very well spec'd tram, particularly in that central core. What about Leeds? Leeds doesn't have anything, Will. Leeds doesn't have anything at all to start with. Leeds, the reality is that Manchester and Leeds both merit a full metro system, a full segregated metro system. Anyway, let's continue on our German odyssey. Oh yeah, I did point out that you might have a situation where the capacity is high enough of a Stadtbahn that it reaches heavy tram status. So, now we're going to talk about Stadtschnellbahn, or Schnellbahn for short. Generally considered to be that S-Bahn is the contraction of Stadtschnellbahn, Stadtschnellbahn. But also it's kind of taken on a bit of a life of its own as a definition. There we are. The familiar S-Bahn, German S-Bahn sort of badge there, which is very nice. There we are. Given the low density of British cities, it's probably a good model for places like Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds, potentially. But I still think that you'd merit. Thing is, British cities did not have particularly low density in the centres. They just have rubbish density when it comes to the urban outer core. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have fully segregated systems. I am wary of high capacity systems that rely on non-segregated elements. I think that potentially is a limitation. Not necessarily a showstopper, but a limitation. Yeah, I was going to say inner Manchester is more dense than central London. Manchester absolutely merits a heavy, a high capacity system that beyond that which a tram, even a Stadtbahn style tram could provide. So. The Metro Valencia non-tram lines as a metro has request stop, is single track, and it's narrow gauge. None of those sound like things that cause headaches. Save up your categories test systems to the end, because we'll do all the ones that are all of your fun edge cases. Chuck them back at me at the very end. Let's keep going. So S-Bahn, the trains. To give you an idea of the look of the technology. They all kind of look like this, but that, as you can see, can mean anything, because you've got double-decker. I would count kind of French RER is sort of comes similarly into this sort of type of categorization. You might hear people calling it like heavy suburban, like you might call it. In fact, you know what? I was about to shoot my own fox. The point being that S-Bahn covers lots of different types of system, and the general understanding of an S-Bahn is that you have. Let's have a think. So let me think of the way to summarize this. Rather than doing a sketch of the city, this time we're just going to say you might have a big sort of central station, and you might have a few sort of smaller stations, kind of maybe either side. Kind of a few sort of smaller stations, maybe kind of either side. But then you've got sort of stations here and here and here and here, and then maybe another couple here, and then another, and then, stations, and a station here, and then a station here, and then another station out here. And then to link those up, you might go, right, well, there is an existing railway that connects these. Fine. There we go. Lovely. And what we're going to do is, so there's an existing fairly complicated former railway network. We're going to hijack it. We're going to hijack that system. We're going to then sort of provide some level of operational sensibleness. So we're going to provide that you can change in these cores, but actually we're going to create a system that splits out the operational model a bit to provide some level of service segregation. There we go, and then you can see what's going on here. There we go. So we have here 3 lines, and within what we have, this bit here is usually called the core. There we are, the core. I don't know why I wrote 3 there. We've got 3 lines. And we've got the bit in the middle that's called the core. Now, this is generally what S-Bahn refers to, and it might be that so you might have the Hauptbahnhof here, there's the main station there, and then you've kind of got inner city stations that'll be larger, kind of multi-platform stations. these systems generally, as they've been improved, have introduced more and more segregation. So it might start that this is on, this might well be on a mainline railway that kind of connects up this way and then maybe comes through, and then perhaps it might be that there's a terminal platforms here for this bit. It could be that actually this goes like this and then connects off that way and goes off There might be branches coming off this for like freight bits. There could be often in Germany you end up there's like a big kind of freight loop thing that connects. There's all sorts of different things, but the point is, this is part of you're making use of a complicated railway network and making best use of that infrastructure to provide some level of mass transit, of dedicated passenger transit system. You can see that the benefit is that you've got this kind of, or rather you have the behaviour is you've got this high density core. Now in the UK we have one system that operates like this. We've got a few lines that get close, but in terms of the true behaviour of this, in terms of actually having an optimised core, Thameslink behaves like this. You could argue that Crossrail is similar, but actually, no. Thameslink has a kind of very much close to an S-Bahn type system. The Cross City line in Birmingham could be there, but isn't. There are a few lines in Manchester that, again, but not really. The point of this is you have this high density core. This core here, very high density of lines. Now, there we are. So yeah, Martha Lawrence says Thameslink's way too mixed traffic and too much regional express to be an S-Bahn. Yeah, but the point is S-Bahn again. Exactly as you're saying, pointing out lots of descriptions here why S-Bahn is it's this, but it isn't this. Because S-Bahn's a stupid definition. Again, we could have other types of layout. You could have in-out suburban services into terminus. These may or may not be segregated. It's not a useful definition. So, S-Bahn can be suburban rail or it can be a metro. But the point is, it depends on whether it has dedicated tracks or not. The only thing, so the behaviours are the same. You don't have any street running. It is a railway system. It's high capacity. But it's whether it has dedicated tracks or not that define whether it's suburban rail or a metro. So, SEPTA is the perfect S-Bahn, except when it comes to how they actually run the trains. Lol. Merseyrail potentially but Merseyrail isn't an S. This is the point. None of these things are S-Bahns because S-Bahn's a stupid definition. It doesn't make any sense. It means all sorts of different things. In German politics, German politicians say you're getting an S-Bahn. When they don't actually mean an S-Bahn at all, they mean something totally different. They might mean a kind of a light suburban metro system, light suburban rail system. Likewise, in Paris, in France rather, we had Macron said that lots of cities were going to get RER systems. They weren't at all. It was again just light suburban rail, or maybe suburban rail systems being rebadged. This is why it's important to avoid those sorts of definitions and look at. Does it have the key thing is, does it have the dedicated tracks or not? And that decides whether it's suburban rail or a metro. So, everyone's saying would be an S-Bahn. Stop calling things S-Bahns. Nothing's an S-Bahn. There's no such thing as an S-Bahn. It's a name. It's a brand name that can be chosen at random and therefore can be politicized and manipulated, just like the word. Yeah. Martha's exactly right. S-Bahn is a branding. Exactly right. So. U-Bahn. What is U-Bahn? Well, this becomes a different discussion. It's like, well, in my not a metro sorter, you remember that there's no thing that says whether it is or is not underground. Now, that isn't to say that whether it is or isn't underground influences where a thing might end up being on the sorter for a couple of reasons. But whether it's underground or not is not relevant. So, there we are. There's the German U-Bahn symbol, as you normally might see it. And yeah, U-Bahn, usually there's stations that are underground, but actually, as with the London Underground, much of U-Bahn systems are often not underground at all. So yeah, there we are. There's a nice, I think that's the Berlin U-Bahn, the newest Berlin U-Bahn train. Oh, is it? Is it? I think it's a Berlin U-Bahn. That's a very nice new one. They were all very old and boxy when I was in Berlin. Here you can see, that's fine. It looks great. Lovely yellow. Marvellous. Again, so U-Bahn, it just means that at some point it goes underground. that's pretty much it. That's the gender. Other people are saying no. Yeah. That's yeah. David Frankel. I'm saying stop calling everything an S-Bahn. David Frankel pointing at the Brookside Garden Centre miniature railway S-Bahn. Well, indeed. Burger Palm saying U-Bahn means independent, not underground. Oh, interesting. Here we go. It is indeed a branding. Yeah, absolutely. It's very much a branding. So there you've got your city here. Fine, lovely, fine. And you put your underground station here. But it being underground affords two useful things, or rather two features that can actually conflict with each other. Number one, by it being underground, it can be segregated more easily than it might otherwise be. It can have a slightly better alignment as well. These things can help improve capacity. So underground, that's good. So let's do a little table here. Good, bad. So things for it is it can be higher capacity. So that's one because it can be segregated. It can have dedicated tracks. It can have better alignment. These are all good things. Bad things. Also, stations can be bigger than they might otherwise be above ground. Similarly, though, putting stations underground can do two things. Firstly, it can increase the generalized journey time from people wanting to get from where they're stood and open their phone and go, how the fuck do I get where I want to go, to getting to the place they want to go. So the fact they've got to go down into a system and then get onto a train, that adds time compared to a surface transport system. The other thing is, by merit of the stations being underground, yes, you can make them as big as you like, but also, no, you can't make them as big as you like, or indeed, if you've got an older system, it can be quite difficult, and passenger flow becomes really critical in an underground system, so that can limit capacity. Certainly in the case of the underground, the thing that's limiting capacity on many lines in the underground at the moment, on the Victoria line, for example, is not the frequency of trains anymore, it's actually the capacity of the platforms in the station to move people out of the train and up out onto street level. So there's some things we have to think about for the old U-Bahn. Here's just a nice picture of the Berlin U-Bahn showing that it again is not underground. It's on the top and looks very nice and snazzy. Fine. Again, there's the Alexanderplatz tower. Very nice. Anyway, U-Bahn, whether it's underground or not, well, again, no matter what the capacity is, if it's underground, it should be a metro. But it might not be. You might even have U-Bahn systems that end up with non-segregated bits, and you end up with, oh, you know what? I'm whizzing over here to just rapid fire copy this over to here. Yes, there we go. Marvelous. I'm very good at doing presentations. Again, it might end up being that it's suburban rail or heavy suburban rail. This and I haven't put it in here. If you end up with it having street running sections, it becomes a tram, which is bad. So there we go. It's a very nice view, that one. So there we go. Bob Price saying reminds me how much of the Paris Metro is above ground. Well, likewise with the London Underground. Most of the London Underground is above ground. So we're getting into some fun ones now. Autobahn. What is the Autobahn? Well, it doesn't really exist in Germany, I don't think, anymore, thankfully. Because here we are, we're getting into fun territory. This is what you're all here for. Fun territory. Autobahn Busway Adelaide. Oh, we're going down to Australia. What's really fun about this is, a variety of things, because it's a good fun case for us to remind ourselves of why the Not a Metro Sorter exists. Here we are. This system, the Autobahn, has buses. They have funny little caster wheels. These will look familiar to lots of people in the UK where we have guided busways. And, humorously, it has a road that has been made expensively. What's even worse with this is that this system does not run particularly high frequency. I'm going to zoom in on this thing because the joke of this system is that to really make sure that it looks like it is not just a road, they've put it on sleepers. They put it on sleepers. So if you look at these things with sleepers, with weird Vossloh clip set up to hold the concrete onto the sleeper. This is a bizarre technological solution. Just utterly bizarre. Also, the fact that all of this is a test section, which is why it looks so knackered, but I am not happy with the level of voiding underneath all of these either. No, thank you. None of that looks good. This is a very bizarre, unnecessary system. So again, it's the reason it has to be big concrete rather than just tarmac, because if you have a bus but you run it on precisely the same thing over and over again repeatedly, you wreck the ground. So what is this system? Well, I think you can all see where this is going. Oh, maybe you can't, because this system does not run at particularly high capacity. I don't believe it gets anywhere near 10,000 passengers per hour per direction. So whilst if it did get past that, it would be a gadget ban, this isn't even a gadget ban. It's just a bus. It's just a bus. Less than 10,000 passengers per hour. It's rubber on concrete. It's not suspended. It's more than 10 people per vehicle. Yeah, it's a bus. It's just a bus. It's just a bus. No ban, as nobody in the chat is saying, but they ought to. Why are you closed is proposing that we build more O-bans just to piss me off. At least the O-ban enables completely step-free access, but they couldn't add lifts in Essen because it's in a highway median. Yes, you can achieve step-free access on all buses. It's possible to do that quite easily. James Derrick saying the advantage of guided buses is they can be converted to trams easily. I would argue, yes, but also I would argue no, because you go to Cambridge, there is an enormous battle on not converting that system when they really ought to. M-Bahn. Oh, here we go. What about the M-Bahn? What is the M-Bahn? Oh, I've got the music that I play for the M-Bahn from my episode on Gadget on maglev. So here, what is M-Bahn? Well, it's maglev. It's a very short-lived, weird maglev system. There it is. Look at it. Very strange. But again, it's a fun one, because even though this has all of the hallmarks, as you'd agree, of a gadget ban, because it has little rubber tires that enable it to wheel along on top when it's going at low speed or the electricity runs off. By the way, yeah, if you want to know what the hell this thing is, we talk about the history of it in this video, my old gadget ban video, which I never made any more of because editing. You get all this content through Railnatter. It was before I knew that Railnatter would sort of generally take on the role of most of this stuff. So what is it? It's a bus again. The M-Bahn's a bus. It's a bus. There we go. It is just a bus. What was I born in a barn? Thanks, Martha Lauren. Very good. Here we go. So there is the M-Bahn, but people who are saying I still don't get it, what's the point of this thing? There are some very angry people in some of the chat threads after I pointed out light rail doesn't exist, and some people are very unhappy about me pointing out that things like this and Stadtbahn are just brand names that aren't necessarily that useful for all of us. Here are some slides that I used recently in a chat with some councillors, actually. I was just talking to them about what they could do within their very limited powers, and then kind of longer-term aspirations, what they could do about improving mass transit in their city. And these are some of the extracted slides. You might recognise some of these from previous rail natters, but the key thing about the Not a Metro sorter is that it starts with the passenger capacity. It starts with the outcomes, which is we want a certain level of mobility, and we need something to enable that. But you have to start with the outcomes. Yeah, absolutely critical to start with the outcomes, right? And then this is then how you develop your overall system. You go, right, well, okay, so I determine the outcomes. I then map the receptors. Now, what I mean by that is, what are the places where people want to travel from? What are the areas like, things like hospitals, schools, concert venues, other stations, other transport hubs. You kind of want to map those. General population density I would argue falls into that category of mapping receptors. So number 3, you then establish corridors. You establish obvious, or you can use kind of network algorithms. Will, I see in the chat, to establish corridors, possible corridors. On those corridors, you can then use those receptors and your specified outcomes to determine. So actually, the reality here is outcome might be we've got an example in a minute, actually. So you've got the outcomes, map receptors, you establish your corridors, and then you calculate the required capacity. You go, well, okay, in order to deliver those outcomes along those corridors, I will need this capacity. And only at that point do you then go, well, these systems can provide this capacity, this system can provide that capacity. The last thing you do is look at the technologies. So so the point of the Not a Metro sorter is deliberately trying to get people out of these technocratic discussions about, but it has this type of signaling, or it's low floored or high floored or level boarding. Those are all valuable functions, but those are valuable functions that frankly often should be applied. The things that they achieve those outcomes are things that should apply to either should be applied to all systems or are immaterial for a given level of capacity. So, if we have an outcome, which is that we, along a given corridor, we want to reduce... we've got an outcome, which is we want to reduce private car modal share by 50%. That's our outcome. We then, kind of looking at the receptors in the corridors, we know between Cottingham and City Centre, spoiler alert, there's a corridor that you might want to use. And then the capacity might then be, well, we need at least 4,000 seats per hour in each direction. So you've got an outcome, you understand the corridor, and then therefore you get a capacity. In other words, and shout out to very early guest actually, Ed Leith. Shout out to Smarter Transport Cambridge for this, but I use it a lot now, and indeed I used it in a meeting with a load of very high level people at the ICD presidential meeting this morning. Nodes before modes, nodes first, modes second, nodes before modes. Right? Think about the outcomes, think about the needs. And then you start perhaps and then applying technologies. And the point of the Not a Metro sorter is that certain technologies simply cannot achieve and deliver certain levels of capacity. If we ignore the weird heavy tram edge cases, trams aren't really much good above 5,000 passengers per hour per direction, right? So you need to step up to a different type of system for high levels of capacity. Martha pointing out that a proxy of this is look at where there are buses more than 20 plus buses per peak hour. Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of a way of looking at this. So the key message here, and this is what the Not a Metro sorter is all about, is to put technology last. Put it last. Put it at the back. It's the last thing to worry about. And that's the point of the Not a Metro sorter. Hopefully that's kind of explained the point of why I kind of created this thing. Why I kind of, yes, tongue-in-cheek, but also slightly seriously push it hard on Twitter and kind of post it underneath things and have a go at people who use categories that are silly. That is the point. That is the point of the Not a Metro sorter. Shout out to those who continue to persist in the idea that this is anything other than a gadget ban. Line 14 on the Paris Metro, it isn't a metro, it's a gadget ban. Because all this extra stupid weight, all these extra bits of infrastructure that it has to have, and the enormous complexity at switches and crossings, all the extra mass over bridges, the fact that the rubber tyres wear out. I wonder who's a large supplier based in France who might have wanted to get tyres on lots of transport systems. Because, spoiler alert, you could do everything that the Paris Metro does, any of the lines, you could get all of them to work with conventional steel and steel without anything fancy. So, yes, indeed. Right, I'm going to go no face briefly, and then we'll come back and answer your questions. I'll go big face / get the Not a Metro sorter up, and we'll do some of your challenges, right? Thanks to everyone for listening to this on audio only form. Hopefully this worked. I'm not sure it did, but that's okay. You can shout at me. Patreon.com/Gareth Dennis to support me in the Patreon. PayPal.me/Gareth Dennis to throw loose change and abuse at me, and comments or Christmas presents, as a few of you lovelies did over Christmas, over the holiday season. It was very nice of you. And GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord for the continuation of the chat that's going on. And there's been some brilliant chat in the YouTube chat. Hello, everyone in the YouTube chat. You're all brilliant. Ho, ho, ho. Adam Evans says, yes. Right. Who doesn't love breathing in rubber particulates? Don't. I hate the smell of the line 14. When the rubber really makes the whole thing smell horrible. It's rubbish. So, there we go. Next week, episode 150, things are going just great. It's a news episode. The title may change. But we're getting Bonnie Price is joining us. Bonnie's joining us, which will be great. Looking forward to that. Hello, Bonnie, if you're watching this after the fact. It'd be lovely to have Bonnie joining us. And we'll talk about what the hell's going on generally in the news. Because good grief. Anyway, right. Get my large face up. So we have the Not a Metro sorter up. I'm going to change the colour of the pen so that we can point aggressively at it as required. Let's get the nice red. Actually, you know what? Let's go. Yeah, red's fine. Red's nice and clear. So lots of chat going on. Chris Bird. We can start with Chris Bird. Do you think the West Midlands Metro is correctly named? No, it isn't. It's just a tram. It's a tram. Excellent point. M14 smells due to water infiltrations. Yeah, that too. Michael C has got a couple of edge cases. Yeah, go on. Pop the edge cases in. David Frankel say Eurostars and S-Bahn. No, it's not an urban mass transit system, so it doesn't count as part of this. Just like when people say, "What's a boat?" It's like, well, no, it's not. This is on land urban mass transit system categorizer. Right. Check flaps. Bristol Metro West. It's not a metro. No. I don't think it's crazy to suggest that, like, underground, fine, but I would suggest getting a. I would say starting out with Bristol is, again, what the outcomes they want. So what level of modal shift do they want the public transport to create? Develop the corridors, and don't develop the corridors based on where you've got space. Develop the that's a useful side thing to look at, but only do that once you've developed, where do people need to move from and to. Where are the concentrations of population, where are the concentrations of jobs. They're probably all over the place. Map them. Do some nice modelling to work out do modelling of what all those routes look like. Use the OD, origin destination data from kind of the induction loops in the roads to work out what the traffic flows are. Use ANPR if you can, to anonymously, of course, to get those flows in, to understand what journeys people want to use, and then develop a multimodal strategy based off that. And only once you've done that should you then start thinking about what the tech is. The challenge of going, we want an underground from the start is like, well, okay, why? What capacity are you intending that to achieve? Why does it need to be that capacity? Provide the data. Really dig into it. So, let's see. Right, Burger Palmer saying Berlin S-Bahn is fully segregated except one terminus where it shares station tracks with diesel branch lines. Is it a metro? It's a bit like some of the systems on. I'm willing to let like some of those slight infractions pass, because like if you look at some of the London Underground lines where they're sharing with main lines, ideally they wouldn't be doing that. Ideally they wouldn't be sharing with children services, but there is ideally you would kind of get rid of that lack of segregation. So whilst I'm willing to say that the Berlin S-Bahn is a metro, it's like they should maybe strive to get rid of some of those diesel branch lines. Michael C. South Wales Metro. Oh, I say, wait a minute. You're saying it's the diesel. It's the. Let's see. Let's see. What's the? Some of the chat here. Let's see. Fine. I've lost the questions. No, they're here. Randstad Rail in the Hague. Tram that shares tracks with Metro. No, it's no on street, but it shares with Metro. Oh, you mean the Metro doesn't have any on street, or the tram doesn't have any on street? If it's a tram, that doesn't necessarily mean on street, but if it's running on like across an open square. When I say kind of on street running, I suppose is a slight euphemism for like the segregation. Does it have, can people walk across the tracks unprotected and stuff like that? Are there at grade crossings? So I suppose on street running I could replace with at grade and the not a metro sort. There's a potential, but I suppose on street running was a bit of trying to think of a simple but snappy little thing to catch it. So I'd have to look at the Cookie Monster. I'd have to look at the specifics on that one. I did not mention the Schwebebahn. What you mean the Dangleway? So let's see. Michael C. South Wales Metro. It's a where if on the lines that have on street running, it's a tram, and where you have other than that, I think it's light suburban rail, not a metro though. Let's see, go down here. Michael C. The interurbans which have street running, which you showed at the beginning, they're trams. Let's see. Xander Veitch. Xander, I didn't see your correction. If you uncorrected my correction of myself. How would the sort of deal with route branching? If you've got 4 trains per hour on a branch, but 26 per hour in the core, how is it classed? Depending on which would obviously influence whether it's, for example, a light metro versus a full metro. Okay, I suppose as you're standing on the line, I would say I'd do it by line. But if you've got a core that then results in being a metro, then you could kind of use that as you could sort of caveat it that way. But I would say if you're standing on, the weakest link is the way I define it. So if you're standing on one of those branch platforms, and you've only got 4 trains an hour, then chances are it's a light metro, right? Michael C. Those weird towns in the US where freight railroads run basically down the town's high street. Well, that's not really That's not really an urban mass transit system. So that's it's fun though. I'll give you that. I might have missed questions where you've not atted my naming because I've just gone to the name atting. Let's see who else is saying things. Let's see. Am I prepared to call certain interlining types of tram without any street running a light metro? It depends. I just have to look at the system on merit. Like, does it have, does that system, if it's steel wheels and steel rails, if it has any on-street running, it's a tram. If it doesn't have any on-street running, but it doesn't have dedicated tracks, then it's light suburban rail. Cookie Monster, yes. It was a good opportunity to make a nice S-Bahn. Yeah, that's true. Quite possibly. Possibly. Michael C. Lines like Thameslink 2, aka Crossrail, which are a bit of a mix between metro and suburban heavy rail. Yeah, Crossrail is a heavy suburban rail system. It's not a full metro because it has sections where it mixes with other traffic. Martha Lauren is emphasising it's not a question of what kind of system should the city have, but what kind of system should a particular set of corridors have. Yeah, absolutely, fully agree with that. It's really, really important to. It's really important to absolutely look at a corridor on merit, not just the city. It's not, what's the population of a city? Population of a city can be a good guide, and indeed I've got populations of cities that I would associate should have, I would expect to see this level of provision, but all cities are different. The reality is you need to look at a corridor and look at the population of the corridor, the types of traffic along those corridors. Absolutely, Martha. Martha, I need to have you on an episode at some point if you ever fancied it. Subject of your choosing. Maybe the next Not a Metro episode we can do battle. We can joust over this. Michael C. Also wanted to ask what I think should be done to solve the level boarding issue between subsurface lines and mainline trains that have different floor heights. Well, that's another reason why segregation is quite important for a metro system, because you can guarantee that you provide, or you can at least make things like level boarding much more simple. My solution is that you segregate. Standardization and segregation for those sorts of situations. Creature XXII, which is Creature 22, a bit off topic. What grades can metro trains climb compared to freight train heavy rail? That's quite a reasonable question. It's a traditional rail natter where we have a Q&A section. That's fine. Pass. It depends on all sorts of different questions. Those grades, it depends on the train, the motor ratings, the kind of the momentum it has. So for example, you might get really steep grades on some metros on the approaches to stations. Can I sketch? Let's get the old let's get my small face back. So if you have generally in stations, and it doesn't have to be underground, but if you've got a station here. Generally, you have the tracks will rise to it and then fall away from it. So the train's coming this way and then going this way. You'll try. I don't know why I've done died there. For that's the station. So you've got lots of people stood here waiting for their train. The reason for that is because it saves energy to decelerate into the station, and it saves energy accelerating out of the station. So almost all the Crossrail central section stations are built like this, and you can see the vertical curve quite dramatically, which is going to be a real pig when they have to rebuild all those stations to get level boarding. So to rebuild the platforms to 915 height. Anyway, the reason for that is to save energy. And those can be really steep because ultimately it's not like the train's having to work up the hill so it's limited only by an emergency situation where the train, say, for whatever reason, pauses here and then has to climb. But you would generally in operation just never expect, and generally you design the signalling that the train will simply never stop on those steep parts. So you can, they're kind of like you can have really, really steep gradients, like 1 in 25, or you can have really, really, really steep gradients on certain train systems. Bob Price, for example, the trams which may run past Cardiff Base Station will be alongside the road, but still a tram. Yeah, it will still be a tram because I think you'll be able to walk over it. The South Wales tram and light suburban rail system isn't very snappy. No, but the point is you could come up with a better, broader name that doesn't have to kind of potentially missell what it is. I understand that Metro is... The reason I picked Metro, and it's a fair shout that Metro is a bit of a brand name as well, but Metro for me is reasonably it's a reasonably well understood term globally across different languages, and generally if you say metro, people do have an association with what that represents in terms of reliability and capacity. But you could just call it South Wales Transit, or there are other alternatives that avoid the politicization. So, oh god, YouTube, stop jumping around. Merseyrail is not, well, there's no such thing as S-Bahn, Gareth. So Merseyrail is suburban rail, I think. It's not quite heavy suburban rail, and in some cases light suburban rail, but it's suburban rail because it does run on non-segregated tracks. Hastings Cliff Railways. Oof. Funiculars are often like metros, just as a little one there. Michael Fox says the core Valley line's now like metros. It's dedicated lines. Is it dedicated though? Is it fully dedicated? Kind of fully segregated. Metro Valencia, the non-tram lines have level crossings and single track sections and request stops. Trains meter gauge. So meter gauge irrelevant. Request stops irrelevant, although a weird function, and that'll limit capacity. Single track sections. Especially on single track sections, I would suggest that that's not dedicated. Single track would, to me, suggest not dedicated tracks. But yeah, there's maybe a bit of a semantic battle to have there. But the fact that it's level crossings means that it's not, it's not dedicated tracks. You could even say that's so I would say it's light suburban rail. If you've got level crossings, it's light suburban rail. Gregors is asking, do level crossings with barriers still classify the system as on-street running? No, that's just not dedicated tracks. Jan is saying, have you seen the level boarding solution in Mülheim, Ruhr, for low and high floor trams on the same station? It's awful but funny. Is that where they've got the two platforms kind of adjacent and they run back and forth? That might be the one there. That's some solutions. I haven't specifically seen the Mülheim solution though. Check Flaps is saying, by my flowchart, rail mail is like metro. Yes, it will be. How would I class an S-Bahn core where S2 is only on dedicated infrastructure? S2 shares branches with long distance trains. Is that then shared infrastructure or not? No, that would mean that S1. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really nice edge case, Xander. I would still say that's one of those exceptions where I'm like, you can make that judgment as to whether it makes the impact, but I would say that that's still making it an edge case. Let's see. Cookie Monster. My last question made no sense. Gareth Ennis, you mentioned CAFs cracking earlier. Which manufacturers would you say make good quality trains and don't? Which manufacturers last the longest? Well, that's a hell of a long question. All I'll say is the best trains in the UK right now are Stadlers. Closely followed by, so my two favourite trains generally are, in terms of the order of certainly for suburban stock, kind of urban trains. I would go with, I think the S stock's very good, but my favourite are the Flirts, very much the Flirts. So Merseyrail's 777s when they're running will be fantastic. They'll be the best urban trains out there. Followed by the City to Zero fleet. I think Siemens trains, they are very good trains. They're just very unloved. There's so much graffiti and damage on the Thameslink trains. It's such a depressing state of affairs, really. It's what happens if you sack everyone. Xander's saying it's not an edge case. No, it's an edge case on here. It might be a frequent occurrence, but it is an edge case on the not a metro sorter. The point is, because I would still say those are not dedicated tracks. Then it means it's light suburban or suburban rail rather than a metro. Which is fine. S-Bahn, I'd generally expect something that's branded as S-Bahn to fall into the suburban or heavy suburban rail categories anyway, not metro categories. So I think that's fine. 777s aren't Flirts. Oh yeah, right, they're not Flirts. No, they are Flirts. I think they are Flirts. Stadler. I think they are Flirts. In any case, the best trains currently running... Yeah, agreed on the fact that the floor heights on Thames are too high. The best trains currently running are on the network are all Flirts, because the long-distance services, the 745s are very, very good. The 755s are very, very good. I thought 777s are based on the Flirt platform. But anyway, right. Yes, Bob Price was on. Yeah, Bob, I'm glad you were enjoying the trip out on the TFW Stadlers. They are fantastic. Xander's saying that 777s aren't Flirts. Stadler's Metro platform height. Yeah, they're at 915 mil, Martha. So that's good. And likewise, the Tyne Metro ones will be too. Yeah, you're right. They're not. So people are saying they're not Flirts. Anyway, right. The Ottawa O Train Confederation line. I don't know off the top of my head and on the mouse. I'm going to use the Notometro. Remember, everyone, use the Notometro sorter to your heart's content, and do send them at me and hashtag Notometro on them on Twitter. We can have good fun on that. Merseyrail have just tweeted the 777s will start next week. That's very exciting. Anyway, right. That was fun. We ran on a bit at the end there, 15 minutes of extra fun chatter, but hopefully some interesting stuff. I'm going to see you all next time. Will, give me 15 minutes. Will and Xander and everyone, give me 15 minutes. Come join you in your call. I will see all of the rest of you next week with Bonnie Price. Cheerio, cheerio. Oh, wait a minute. Lou Bagmark is asking, regional train in Glasgow, are they heavy suburban rail or just regional train? I don't think there's any fully segregated trains in. I'm still waving. Trains in Glasgow. I think they're all sort of suburban rail. I'm not sure any have the capacity of heavy suburban rail, although some of the core is pretty high capacity, but I think it's all still just suburban rail. Anyway, I'm waving to the point where I'm going to get RSI. Cheerio!